Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for SME's Manufacturing Technology Series webinar, Keys to Unlocking Industrial Insights to Detect and Prevent Performance Issues. Today's webinar will discuss how teams have gained access to insights from manufacturing data to improve operations across value streams and a variety of manufacturing verticals. You'll learn practical examples of applied data science through real-life use cases, approaches to advanced data analysis to help start faster and reduce time to value, and understand why analysis across all levels of operations multiplies total value. I'm Carl Mitroff, MT Series Content Manager, and thank you for joining us. Before we get going, I just have a few housekeeping items I want to discuss. Now, you'll notice right away your microphones have been muted. If you have any questions regarding the functionality or you have any issues technically, please use the chat feature and put your question there, and we'll try to help you as best we can. If you have technical questions that you would like to ask our speakers throughout the webinar, you can submit them using the Q&A box. We'll be monitoring both actively throughout the webinar. And in the event of any technical glitches that you experience, we are recording this webinar and we will make it available within about 2 hours on our MT Series website. Moderating today's webinar is Paul Boris, President and CRO of Premo. Paul has driven digital transformation with the industrial and field operations for decades. He has deep and practical knowledge of lean principles and digital transformation and uses this skill to deliver the greatest impact in the shortest cycle. Paul is dedicated on delivering solutions to manufacturing and field service operations with an intense focus on creating sustainable and scalable value. He advises many large industrials and small to medium-sized organizations alike, as well as startups in advanced robotics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. Thanks a lot, Paul, for moderating today's webinar, and I'm going to kick it off to you.
Thanks, Carl, and certainly thanks to SME for allowing us to have this discussion today. You've got a great set of discussions the entire series. This one I particularly enjoy because we've got a great set of presenters in the panel, and we're going to try to keep it a spirited discussion. We're going to stay away from this present and talk and maybe get some questions, and we'd like to get a little interactive discussion. So if you've got questions as we're going through, send them in, and we'll try to incorporate them as we move along, as opposed to waiting to the end of the discussion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it off to our panelists. I'm going to ask them to take just a minute and introduce themselves. We'll start with Jonathan Weiss from AWS. We've got Rick Wheeler from Lifecycle Engineering, a colleague of mine, Alex Kelly with Premo, and Peggy Gulick from Kohler, and she is the director of Smart Factory. And what we've assembled here are some best practice providers, some technology providers, most certainly someone who's a practitioner in the industry with Peggy, really trying to drive this transformation. So each of these panelists will introduce themselves. They'll take a minute or so to kind of tell you what their background is and how they look at this space. And then I'm going to ask Peggy, when we get to you, if you would just expand on the topic a little bit, maybe touch on the things that seem to be working well right now, but maybe more importantly, the things that you're seeing that are creating some impediments, and we'll kind of kick the discussion off there, if you don't mind. So John, let's start with you, and if you'd like to take a moment, introduce yourself, and let us know a little bit about how you're attacking the market space.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Paul. I can't see on my side if we're sharing a slide, but hopefully we are. I've just got one slide to kind of tee up the AWS talking points. But hey, great to see everybody. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today. My name is John Weiss, based in Greenville, South Carolina, and I work for AWS, a name you probably recognize, but specifically for a group called AWS for Industrial, maybe a name you don't recognize. AWS for Industrial is really an internal kind of focused initiative where we're making it easy for industrial customers to do things like innovate, automate, and scale industrial workloads on AWS. And we're doing that through what we call purpose-built services and solutions. And we do it in one of the widest ecosystems of partners, right? And so what that means is we're bringing services and solutions to you with the pointed perspective of doing something in the industrial space. And it's really focused around helping organizations collect data and do something with the data, right? Kind of answering the so what in Industry 4.0. How do we drive actionable insights? How do we start to do things and automate processes with all that industrial data? So really excited to be here with this great panel and looking forward to seeing some of your questions come in.
And Rick, as we move to your slide, the one thing I did forget to mention right off the top is, these folks are on this panel because they're thought leaders in the space and they're driving change very rapidly. You shouldn't imply any business relationship between the companies. This is not a reference call. This is just a chance to get some great insights from some great people in the space. So, John, thanks. Rick, over to you.
Rick Wheeler, I'm Executive Director for Lifecycle Engineering. Spent bulk of my career in early career nuclear plant construction, operation, maintenance, and then 28 years or so in pharmaceutical manufacturing, engineering, and maintenance and automation kind of roles. So just quickly from some of our thoughts when we talk about the Industry 4.0, I hear this a lot, but it's not an IT project, right? It will affect all aspects of your business. There will be business processes that need to be changing. We're looking for that optimal blend between the people and the technology and the processes. We know that's all critical to a successful project. You need to deploy the new tools and processes that leverage the data you have today. So, don't let good be the enemy of great, right? So we want to start. We don't want to wait for perfection to get started, but by the same token, kind of trust but verify. You start where you are, but understand as you mature, your accuracy, your error bar will get smaller. And really, one of the primary things we really stress when we do transformations is don't forget the people, right? The change management, the helping people change the way they've done work. And sometimes 20 or 30 years of doing a job a certain way, and we're bringing some new technology, new processes, new methodology. So, don't forget to include the people in that change. And those are really foundational to successful transformations. That's all I have, Paul. Thank you.
So, Alex, over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul and John and Rick. Great to have you part of the discussion, as well as Peggy. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Kelly. I'm the Director of Solution Architecture here at Primo. I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation. I spent the beginning part of my career working as a manufacturing engineer in a variety of different plants across the U.S. and really saw how some of the newer technology with Industry 4.0 was starting to really transform operations. From there, I went to look at how I could help drive this digital technology into the space. And I've seen a lot of the challenges and happy to see the different solutions talked about with here, John and Rick, bringing these solutions to marketplace to really address these challenges. AWS and a lot of the cloud platform providers out there are doing a great job collecting the data, allowing visualization. Rick talked about some of the challenges on the personnel side. It's not just about deploying the technology, but how do you actually bring the people into that mix as well. And here at Primo, kind of looking through now that a lot of that data has been collected, a lot of the older machines have had the data extracted. How do we really take a lot of that deep expertise that's buried inside that data, run it through some advanced analytics, and really turn that into insights so the people that Rick is bringing into the process can now, instead of looking through the data, start taking that data and drive action from it. So really excited to kind of have the conversation here about different technology in the space, and then hear from Peggy up next, who is actually out in the plant dealing with the different technologies out there.
Thanks, Alex. And Peggy, before you kind of jump into this, I just want to say I've known Peggy for a few years now. I have a lot of respect for women who drive into the space that's typically a male-dominated space. I mean, we've got a bunch of guys on this call, and Peggy's really the leader from the manufacturing side. I've watched her do some very significant and differentiating things in her different roles at different companies, really bringing some of the newest technologies, not just into the operation as an experimental use case, but it's amazing when you can walk a plant floor and see folks who are some of the most senior folks in an operation who are clamoring for the technology that she's introduced, not because it's cool tech and not because it's interesting, but because it's actually bringing very specific value. I mean, that's unusual. She drives a different kind of culture in bringing these technologies and bringing this value. So we're really thrilled to have you on the conversation. And Peggy, again, take a minute and introduce yourself. But if you could kind of walk from that introduction into what you're seeing that's working, and then, like I said, maybe where some of the impediments are and things that we could focus on and team up around driving transformation faster.
Absolutely. I appreciate the introduction, Paul. We have known each other, and I think there's mutual respect and admiration there. So my slide, actually, since I am the industry person on the call, goes back to really talk about my career and how I've been fortunate to work, as Paul said, not only with technology and innovation, but with culture. And, started in IT at IBM. Left there to go to Pure Fishing, where I implemented SAP around the world and became a business process improvement person back when it was cool to be business process improvement. And it was just hitting the market because of ERP systems. Left there to go to AGCO and really transformed myself into a lean and IT director to digital transformation globally. And really exciting times, right? Hitting the front end of when we all started talking about Industry 4.0 with plants in Germany and all around the world. And then just recently, 4 months ago, left and went to Kohler, where I'm super excited. They're really taking the smart factory to heart, right? Not just the single problem, single solution, but this broader solution that's built on a really solid, flexible foundation. So that being said, I think the relevance to the discussion today, at least I hope, Paul, the reason I'm here is, I've worked for companies that have encouraged entrepreneurial spirit. They've shared my passion, which really is to connect everything, people, process, and technology, and to automate where monotony or there's risk of imminent, the monotony coming in from repetition. Repetition is what I'm looking for. I kind of always have felt that I'm someone who genetically was born to be agile, lean, transformative, digital, before it was really cool in the industry. So I've had these great employers who have allowed me to sort of go outside the lines of comfort and try to bring greater value back into the business. So that's who I am, and I think how I'm relevant to this discussion, and I hope it leads to good conversation. So I think, Paul, you asked then, really in my current day experience, not understanding what's working and what really are areas that I still find some need to challenge or find better alternatives or options. So I think one of the things that's working well, and I know is a big word for many, is data is far more accessible to us than ever before. I'm going to have to add into here with all of my co-panelists here, so are vendors and partners, right, who want to come in and help us store it, analyze it, and predict it. So there's lots of opportunity out there with data, and data has become cheap and easy to store, and then it's just how we make sense out of it, right? So I think that's a critical piece. I think the other piece comes back to the culture side that Paul talked to, and that's our people and the upskilling or really allowing our people to grow in what they do. And I like to look at it too as we're really augmenting our people, right? And that's, I think, a critical point in the times we sit in right now, where I think, I want to say NOM said by 2030, North America alone will be 2.1 million employees in the deficit in manufacturing. And that's going to be hitting our economy by, and I'm going back to quote here, I think $1 trillion just in North America. So if we don't augment our people, it's not replacing them anymore, right? And finding that with technology, it's augmenting them so that we can work smarter, not harder. So I think those are two of the key places that I've really, you see every day more and more improvement on that. Some of the things that I'm still, we have probably talk about at least once a week, if not 5 times a week, is really that the siloing of the data that we just talked about, right? So whether it's machine to machine or plant to plant, or just even one of our assembly lines to another. I think that piece of it, as we're growing our data, we still have a lot of opportunity to make it more hyper connected or relevant to everyone. I think the other piece is roles and responsibilities, right? So I think I've been in, I don't know how many different conferences on IT/OT convergence, right? How does that work now? How does cybersecurity work? How do those things work when we have this operational technology that we're really sort of reinventing, but we have to ensure that we don't have the risk, yet allowing some calculated risk? And I think way back in the day, Paul, I said to you, I'm not afraid to jump out of the airplane, but I certainly want a parachute and I want to check it once or twice and I want 2 pull cords on it. So I think calculated risk, though, is something that's become part of our vocabulary, and failing also has become part of the vocabulary. You just have to keep the risk at bay. And I think Paul talked a little bit at the beginning about, our plants are not all green fields. They're very, very brown. As a matter of fact, I read something recently that many of our machines now date back to the history, having the length of time on the floor of the 1940s, where they're in excess of 10 years, and some of them even 40 years old. And so those have languages, right, that are very difficult to bring into the broader picture of innovation and advanced manufacturing. And yet, and they have bandwidth issues, right? Being able to run sensors and feed information as quickly and timely as other things. I think for my personal, in every company I've been in, ERP systems we have in place, I think we forget sometimes that we're not just going forward, that we have to go back and shore up some of what we've done in the past to make sure it's fully supportive, lean enough, and flexible enough to take us to that next place. And I think my final one, really, which would bring a great discussion back to this place, and we just had some talks on it this morning at my company, is the hammer looking for the nail. And I think now we actually laugh at it even more so, right, where the hammer's looking at screws and trying to make sure that they're called nails. So I think we've gone to the next level of, how do we make sure we have a problem we're solving, we have value we're driving, and that's a scalable value we can bring to our broader organization. So I think that's a pretty long list. Unfortunately, I think I had more things to work on than I did things that are going really well, but that's okay. That's opportunity, right?
Yeah, well, for sure. So as I listen to that and kind of distill that in my head, what I hear is, we've got more data than ever, but we've also got data from these legacy machines and these legacy systems that there's value buried in there. We need to bring it along with us, but it's not necessarily talking the language of these additional systems. We've got a gap in bringing folks in. So we've got a lot of folks exiting the manufacturing space with some very deep, rich experience, and newer folks coming in who are qualified. Companies are training them. I mean, these are great roles. It's just they don't have the 30 years of scar tissue associated with running a process or a machine, nor will they ever. These processes and these roles probably won't last that long anymore. So how do you kind of take that data landscape, some old, some new, not all aligned, and marry it with a culture that's really associated with helping people drive faster, create better gains, be more successful, right? That's ultimately what it's all going to boil down to.
I absolutely agree. I think, more data doesn't necessarily mean better outcome, right? I think I heard a long time ago the term drip, right? Data rich, information poor, don't be a drip, right? I think I saw it on the internet somewhere, but I think you're absolutely right. There's so much data now. It doesn't necessarily mean we're smarter unless we're using it accordingly. So.
Yeah, and there's a half a dozen, as you stated, vendors for every one of these bubbles that do a great job, that are trying to get your time, and
Yep.
that's one of the things we're going to try to decipher here. And maybe if we switch into a little bit of the panel discussion, I'll remind everyone, please send the questions in via the chat, and we'll work them in the conversation. But maybe we'll switch to John and to Rick here for a minute, because John is really in the data side of it, heavy data. Not to dismiss, the people side and what you do at AWS Industrial, John, but maybe talk about, take a moment. How are you addressing this new and old data, data at rest, data in motion, and then getting people engaged with it from kind of the data side, which I think is really your strong point. And Rick, maybe if you'll pick up that thread and talk about it from the people side and getting people engaged in that.
Yeah, that's a good question, and my gosh, a lot to unpack, a lot of really important things that you said, Peggy. If I had to boil it down, I would say that it's really about agility, adaptability, and purpose, right? Those three things kind of came through to me when Peggy was talking, and it's purpose. Well, the hammer finding the screw, I think that's hilarious, by the way, because I think that's a really accurate description of what's going on today in this space. But it all starts with a purpose, right? Why are we looking for new technology, and why are we looking to do something with data? What's the outcome that we want, right? So that's really how we approach data. It's really more about the business outcome that our customers need or our customers want, right? What are the pain points that people are facing in a process today? Is it a quality challenge? Is it some kind of lean methodology problem that they have, right? Then let's figure out if we have the right data that we can put into motion to solve it. Maybe we need different data, right? Maybe we need to clean the data we have. I don't know. But it all starts with the outcome. And then I think the agility and adaptability piece, to me, that's really about providing the blocks and the components and the services to build something that's really important to your organization that can evolve with you as your business needs change and your operational needs change. Because, most of us know this, by the time we start and finish the project, the requirements have changed, right? The challenges are a little bit different because this stuff takes time. And even the quick projects that maybe don't take so much time to implement, well, after you use it a year or two, you better believe that the market's going to demand something different from your organization, right? And you need the technology to adapt with it. So kind of a high level answer, Paul, but that's really where my mind is when I think about this.
Yeah, and look, I don't think anybody takes the fact that you're looking at it as a technology play as opposed to a people play. I think, Rick, your experiences in advancing teams and advancing business value by creating more engaged teams is directly relevant. I mean, you kind of look at it we're looking at the same issue, but from a little different vector. Maybe, when you look at it from the people side, and like John said, building these solutions, building these applications that make sense, what are you seeing as kind of key to helping clear some of these impediments?
I think, tagging on some of the things John and Peggy have mentioned, that taking that holistic asset management approach, and ISO 55000 standard came out and talks about stakeholder requirements and really understand. So that's to me, that's the why. That's the what business is there to accomplish, and then again, the people, process, and technology that are going to help us allow us to do that. But from the people side, whether it be the aging workforce and tribal knowledge walking out the door, whether it be new technology that we're bringing onto the shop floor and trying to help people understand, why we need this data, how we're going to use this data, what their role is in collecting accurate data. Really that standard work, that idea of some standard work processes that from the time a capital project is thought of till the time that project is decommissioned, how are we going to manage that life cycle to manage that total cost of ownership and employ the technology that comes available to us, right? Again, a lot of the companies we deal with, they are very old plants. They're very reactive. We find many times they don't even have, 50% of their assets aren't even in their CMMS and EAM system. So, to think, well, how are we going to use that for a lot of data analytics if we don't even really truly know what's in our plants, right? You have to start at that foundational level. Now, that's not quite as sexy and shiny as perhaps a new software in a 3D animated model, but without the fundamental things, how good is your model again? So those are some of the things we really come in and work on, help build that foundation and really help understand why is it important to have these assets in your hierarchy? Why is it important to write your maintenance history and record your work history against these assets so we can plug it into our analytics so we can see where those failures are occurring, and then use the right tools and techniques to analyze and come up with what should we augment, what should we model, how do we best leverage this to again accomplish that stakeholder value, which is why we're in business. We have we have these assets to perform a function safely, environmentally consciously, but profitably, right? So all those things are rolled into those business processes that then, in our opinion, help inform. Okay, here's where we should spend our time and technology. No one has the resources to apply this to every part of their facility, right? Nor do they probably need to. Certainly, critical functions is where this stuff can really start making that difference in the high performing companies and the companies that are struggling.
So, so Peggy, this is great, right? Because there's a great discussion around doing data and apps and building things, and there's a great discussion around looking at process and driving people. The reality is you've got quite a bit of data that you've already got. You've been collecting it. My feeling is, disciplined companies are disciplined in the accumulation of data, right? We don't just collect things for the sake of collecting them anymore. We haven't been doing that for quite a few years. So that historic data, the current data coming in, when you look across the landscape, do you think that there's opportunity to wring more value out of what you've already been collecting, get more money out of the investments that have been made in kind of the industrial Internet of Things, or have you exploited all of that at this point?
Yeah, isn't that a good question, Paul? And I'm not sure at the end it's as important to say, is it as important, the data and the information, or am I really financially right now able to replace all of my old systems with new systems so that I'm moving forward? So that's for most companies, at least the companies I work for, that's not an option. So I think the answer has to be yes, right? The answer has to be yes, and taking what we've already stored, the information we already have. But then I think, retrofitting those machines so that they can give more information, right? Our older systems, our older, whether it be sensors, whether it be, putting edge gateways to, all those things that we know we can do, but retrofitting those systems. So I think that question for me is always, it sort of went away a while ago, because that's not an opportunity that most companies have to go back in and replace all those old systems with new systems. And of course, whatever process is using that old system, that information is important, right? It's all important. So I think it has to be, and I don't think, in 10 years, I think a lot of that stuff will start going. Technology will advance so greatly that maybe the bandwidth from the old system to get what we need won't be there. But right now, I think it's not a choice, right? We can replace the things we have to, but I think most of us have to find ways to work with that historical data and then make those systems smarter or retrofit smarter.
Yeah, and I spent a number of years at one of the largest industrials, or at least formerly the largest industrial, and I used to joke, you don't come from corporate and kick the door open to the plant and say, hey, everybody stop, I got a new idea, nobody's ever thought about this before. Yeah. We're going to put this new system in and we're going to drive this. I know you're all sitting here doing nothing, waiting for, us corporate types to come and help. Stuff is going on, right? They're doing things now. They're struggling with these topics and issues. And, maybe I'll kind of flip this to Alex and say, there's a specific approach, that we've taken, but if you can just genericize it into, attacking the data as is, where is, right? Using the tools that Jonathan talked about for putting this data into use, the tools that Rick talked about, engaging these teams and these workforces around driving process. Maybe comment a little bit on how you attack that, take that data, and what the current state of the tools allows us to do.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And I think that is a key component to keep in mind here. One of the biggest challenges I saw when I was going across Europe deploying some of these platform systems, not only every site had different types of data, different systems, different labels, everything we've talked about here, but one of the other big challenges were there's a lot of newer technology, and this newer technology is increasing and changing at a rapid rate that it's hard for manufacturing companies to have talent that understand AI and data science, understand how to build these. A lot of the platforms are trying to be drag and drop and make it very easy, but there's still a little bit of technology background that is needed to kind of deploy these systems. So I think from a technology standpoint, one of the biggest things we can really do to help and I'd love to get your opinion on this, Peggy, but is really try to take that burden off of the companies. So, one of the biggest challenges with data and data science and the analytics is having that data clean, labeled, organized, very neat from all the different systems and scalable from site to site. That's a big burden to put on the manufacturer. So how can we as technology providers take that burden off? So, one of the biggest things that we're looking at right now is how can we just take the data, as Paul mentioned, as is, where is. No preparation needed from the manufacturers, and build the tools internally in our software to take that data and build out the correlations and do some of the cleaning and cleansing needed to go into our models. But again, the biggest challenge I saw deploying these systems, and that really slowed things down and put a lot of risk on the manufacturers, was that organization and labeling from site to site. So, Peggy, what are your thoughts on that?
And Peggy, as you kind of frame that, one of the questions that came in was around risk. How you manage risk in driving these projects and picking these projects. Is there a component of risk that gets removed if you kind of take this approach that Alex was just talking about? So maybe touch on both of those constructs as you give an answer here.
No pressure, guys. Thank you, because I love talking about data and garbage and yeah. So I completely agree. So, in my lifetime, we've sort of looked at that solution that you're talking about as a translator, right? So you can bring in all different languages from all over the world, but Paul, you want to see it in English, so see it in English. And we can bring it in any way you want to see it, and you can work with it the way you need to see it, right? And I know it's not languages here, but some of that information is stored so incredibly differently, or that you're right. You need that one portal that allows us, the user on the end, to not care where it's coming from, what it looked like at its point of origination, but it looks like everything else that I'm trying to work with, right? I mean, I think that's just almost critical. And it's difficult because I do think that most companies, just from my short experience, want to work with the new stuff, right? They all want to work. I mean, even the partners and the vendors, the people here, you want to work with the new stuff. You don't want to go back and look at my old machine that I need a USB to plug in to update it, because but I need that system, right? So I think that absolutely that's one of the places where we can drive great value now, right? So all these companies that sit and say, gosh, if I start today, though, I'm collecting data today forward. We all have data, right? There's data all over the place. We just don't know how to make it look the same so that it's easy to, right, to gain knowledge from, or information. And where that risk comes in, I don't know, Paul. I always turn this question back around again. It's sort of that philosophy question of why, and the student that wrote why not on the test was the one that got the best grade in the class. Is there risk? Sure, there's imminent risk, and maybe you're putting together information that isn't. But I think that risk is worth taking, because I think the information that comes from the data in the past. The risk I wouldn't want to take is saying I'm cutting off today and everything forward is important and everything behind me is not. That would be a big risk. It's smaller risk to me to try to figure out how to have all those languages come through something that gives me information, even knowing then that I may be losing some, but I'll take what I can get to broaden the knowledge back to the business or that user interface. Personally, and that's a totally personal answer from what I've seen.
Yeah, and I think, Alex, maybe touch on, because there's two different things there. I think one thing is giving you this kind of harmonized view, making it look the same. I think Alex is going even deeper with the tools and the technology and saying, look, just get into the lowest level and expose these insights that then trigger a behavior pattern from the team. Hey, we didn't know we had that problem. We need a better process. We need a better system. I mean, Alex, anything there that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I think the key is taking, again, the burden off. Instead of sitting there going through the data manually, have the systems do that, so you can take those resources that would be going through the data and now taking action on the insights that are coming out. So focus the teams on the continuous improvement, all the normal things that you would be doing, but having that being driven by the insights coming from the data through these automated systems.
Yep. I absolutely agree. I think that's another thing that happens with a lot of companies. When we say we're collecting big data, it's really small data because we're still defining exactly what data we want to pull for the information we want to see. And I think you're right. You're absolutely right. There's this whole world of information outside of that that we're just not thinking about on a day-to-day basis and could drive great value back into our processes.
But Paul, I would also share, that in some of my experience in the past, though, it's, I was in the pharmaceutical manufacturing for years. We had lots of data. We had data historians, and we used it, retrospectively. We used it during deviation investigations to determine when did the batch go wrong, how far used. But we didn't have the technology, the ability necessarily to act on it positively, which we do now. But we still struggle a bit sometimes knowing what matters, right? You can collect so much data, and does a 5% drop in temperature matter, or does it not matter? What are those signals? So so I think, again, back to that value and the proposition and the stakeholder requirement, framing up what are the assets supposed to perform at, how are they supposed to perform? Then you can inform your analytics to now help me. Where's my trigger points, my step points that allow me to get good useful information or from my data.
Thresholds. Yep, I agree.
And you look,
one thing to add, Paul.
Let me make one point, John, and
sure,
you can touch on this. Rick, when we talked the other day, we were talking about, because many years ago, we used to talk about companies like Hudson Foods and others that had gone out of business because they had an escape, a quality escape that's a pathogen, it's a problem. And we look at the data and we build in these systems and everything else. And we look to just last year, and I'm not picking on these folks because I love manufacturing and I understand these are more complicated than just what the news reports. But we had a vaccine plant that put the wrong material into vials in a pandemic, right? And it shut things down. I mean, how does that happen in a modern world with modern systems, with modern teams that are saying, look, you got to make sure the right part goes into the right slot, the right vial gets filled with the right material. So we're still struggling through that, is my point, regardless of the fact that it's advanced. And John, I cut you off. You wanted to add.
Yeah, I was going to say, and more along the vein of some of the other comments, not so much piggybacking right off this, Paul, but perhaps a little bit. So one thing that came to mind through some of this discussion is just governance and standardization across factories. That's a real problem in this industry. And like Alex and I spent quite a bit of time working in Eastern Europe with some CPG companies, and it was really amazing how the same organization producing the same product in two different factories would calculate OEE differently, right? Or there were nuances on their APQ metrics or their quality inspection metrics. And, just trying to process data, you literally have to calculate the same KPIs differently for the same production runs in two different places, right? Not picking on those folks, because I've learned, throughout the years, this is actually very common, especially in large manufacturers. And so where I'm going with this, just when we look at technology, we think about, as is, where it is. I like that a lot. Governance as providers of technology, right, and as partners in this space, organizations like yours and mine, that's one thing that's really interesting, right? That's kind of on us, I think, to help our customers and our partners implement this sense of governance and standardization and be more prescriptive, right? Like if you look at AWS for Industrial, like we have some solutions and tooling around this where we've created, like back in the days of big data, we called it data dictionaries, right? Because there was so much data, we didn't remember what everything was. It's impossible to remember. So we've got the same concept of data catalogs and stuff like that. But just a really interesting point that I wanted to hit on around this governance, and it'd be interesting to hear Peggy's perspective on that specifically as well.
Yeah, how do you deal with that, Peggy? What do you kick the door open and tell everybody stop, behave? Here's the new plan, or that's a tough one. What's your approach to it?
So I probably take what some people think is the more difficult way of doing that, but it's not my plan, it's their plan. So in the end, this has to go back to, and I think this is a mistake a lot of companies make. They set up all these big organizations at the top of the company to be digital, and you have 30,000 employees worldwide who every time you go in to do something, you have to re-explain it. They don't understand how it's contributing to what they're doing. So when you drive that value back to the floor, and Paul, you saw it in my last life, when we took electronic work instructions to our floor, every employee in the company had an idea to improve their workspace, right? So it takes a little longer, but the idea has to be disseminated. I consider strategy down, goal up, right? So from the bottom up, that has to come back from the 30,000, not from the 12 people sitting in a corporate office, to your point, Paul. We're going to knock on a plant door and say, hey, everybody, I'm here to save you, and here's what we're going to do. They're all going to go, whatever, right? I mean, as soon as you leave the building, that's going to be gone. So I take a little bit different approach, and I do believe I'm a hardcore believer in standards and standardizing things, but again, that can't happen unless you have 30,000 people doing it. Because the minute something changes and they're not bringing it up to date, because standards change, right? Standards aren't, I create this document today of standards and those are my standards now for the rest of my life. That's not the way it works. They modify as we find better ways of doing it. So I'm a true believer in the people and the culture, and I'm 30,000 strong, not executive strong, and that's where the change comes from. Hey, everybody, come in tomorrow and tell me one thing you can do in your workspace that will make your life better and our company more valuable.
I think that's really important. Our process deployment methodology. We obviously you got to get the buy-in from the leadership team, but we engage the workforce, right? And who knows better how to improve their job than they do?
Nobody.
We can certainly guide them. We can coach them. We can educate them, but at the end of the day, they need to have their thumbprint on it. So like these are processes we developed with some education and understanding, but that's so critical. And I think again, that's part of that standard work, part of that people engagement, part of that process is now have standard work and have some opportunity to at least create some at least similar looking things across my organization, right? If not exactly duplicate.
Yeah, great.
And look, Alex and I and some other folks, we kind of teamed up at at GE around this kind of topic, right? When I look at transformation, again, it's really tough to go out and tell people what to do. If you can find pockets of desire to drive change and people who are willing to tell you and people who are willing to work with you, right? Because they know there's 30,000 and everybody's got an opinion. My attitude at GE had always been, there aren't a million different things that you do across a complex organization. There's, hundreds, maybe 100 things you do, a million different ways, right? I mean, you bend it, you break it, you weld it, you bolt it, you blend it, you cook it, whatever. But if you tear all this stuff down to its lowest component, it looks the same. And as a leader, and John's a leader, and Rick's a leader, Alex is, certainly Peggy, you are in your organization, as a leader coming in and saying, here's a way that I can help create some energy and some enthusiasm around driving it. That then starts from the bottom and kind of builds up through the organization. Mm-hmm. And maybe we'll do a quick round. And Alex, if you start, and I'm being cognizant of the time here because we want to keep everybody on time. Alex, give me an example of an organization that seemed like, let's not name names, but seemed pretty complex, pretty broad, but being able to, from your perspective, this concept of the data as is, where is, and use that to expose opportunity that then got a kind of an enthusiasm building within the organization to say, okay, maybe there's something here that's a low risk approach. We can drive it forward. And I'm going to go through the panel. I'm going to end up, Peggy, with you on this one. So let's go with Alex, John, and then Rick and Peggy. So Alex, you got an example?
Not a specific example to not name names here, but I think in general, once you really start kind of rolling up the sleeves and getting into it, I think a lot of companies are seeing that there is a lot of value from what they currently have, and it's opening a whole new view of how they can transform their operation. So moving a lot of things from being that reactive workforce to being more proactive. So how can you quickly, 2 hours into an 8-hour batch, how can you understand if that batch is going wrong and take corrective action versus waiting till the end and having to take down a reactor and do a lot of reactive work and maintenance there. So yeah, I think it's an exciting opportunity right now. And a lot of companies are starting to see that.
And that's really coming from the perspective of saying, let's use these tools like AI and machine learning to grab, again, that data as is, right? We haven't spent a lot of time with those folks having them name everything and every type of problem that comes up on a reactor. You let the big computers kind of grind through that and come up with those situations and those behavior patterns, and then alert the folks. Is that kind of the way you think about it?
Absolutely.
Great. John, you got one that comes to mind, or either real or fictitious example?
Yeah, no, a couple for sure. I think the most successful organizations where we've done this kind of as is, where it is, just give me the biggest bang for our buck, so to speak, without having to reinvent our infrastructure or whatever. Typically, these, in my experience, are organizations in process manufacturing or in the CPG space, because they tend to be very data rich versus traditional discrete organizations that are a little bit more brownfield. They're still back in, trying to collect data typically, right? And these organizations that have really embraced data typically have industrial data lakes, right? So fortunately for us and for them, they have data at rest in a place that's aggregated and can be massaged into whatever it is it has to be. For organizations that don't have that, actually, that's typically an approach that I like to take, is let's start by creating a centralized data repository or data lake, right? Or a data warehouse, depending on your needs. But yeah, I mean, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. So Rick, example where you're able to create quick wins, high value, get some momentum going?
Yeah, went into a facility. It's a very complex and relatively new, 6 years old or so at that time. But went in there, and their kind of problem statement was they were just convinced they had a certain bottleneck in their facility. It was a certain area was really jamming them up. So we basically went in and created a model. Which they had. It was a pharmaceutical plant, had a lot of data. We were able to do some modeling for them and actually demonstrate to them that in fact their bottleneck was a different place in the facility. So again, just having that data that helped prove the tribal knowledge was not right. Perhaps that other area was the area that people got phone calls about and their boss was mad about. In fact, that really wasn't the bottleneck. If they truly solved that problem, which not to say that problem should have been solved, but it wasn't going to get the benefit that they really needed. So using that data and building the models was able to really, to the point we delivered the results and they didn't believe it, right? We had to run the model again. They just were so shocked that could possibly be the bottleneck. There's no way. We know this plant for 6 years. This is not like, no, this is, show me what's wrong in your data and we'll adjust the model. But, it was a very eye-opening experience, really being able to leverage that data that they had. But again, they weren't proactively looking at it, right? They had this data. They were not using it to manage their business.
And that's part of the challenge, right? The more we look at these things, the more we miss what it is we're looking for, right?
And I think to add to that, we've seen that just exact same situation, Rick. There was, people looking at a predictive maintenance use case and very focused on the signals that I've always told them, what is going wrong with this piece of equipment, and ignoring some of the others. And come to find out after you talked about going through some of the data and the analytics, there was actually a different signal that was the key indicator to the maintenance issue that they had. And it was a signal that they've ignored for many years. So that's the other thing is we've talked about collecting the data. There's a lot of insight and value maybe in signals that you're not looking at. And that's part of the power of the technologies to expose.
So Peggy, quick win, something that helped build some momentum, get things moving along.
Yeah, so quick win. I guess I'll make it personal. So I choose the companies I work for based on culture. So quick win to me is working in a culture that can think in a continuous improvement, sort of an evolution versus revolution model, and knows the problems and is solving the problems and is driving the value, right? So the quick win that we had in my last company that sort of went viral was, a quality team who didn't want to walk to a computer to put data in and out, non-conform especially. They got tablets. The tablets were being run over, so the IT team had a Kaizen. The IT team came back and said, not happening. We're either buying duct tape or we're going to get something you can wear. So that's where glass sort of erupted in 2013 in a electronic work instruction quality check training model. And again, it came back from simple problem solving. I think, again, though, using the things we do well with the continuous improvement in the culture, and then adding this robust toolbox of things you guys just talked about, being able to take data from systems and use it from old systems and incorporating it into our lives. Those are things that we need to share broader in our companies, because it's surprising how many people, when they get that toolkit, want to bring that in to solve the problems that they have every day. So long answer, but I think that's where I've seen success.
So one thing you kind of snuck in there that I want to point out is 2013 and glass, right? Everybody's talking about augmented reality now. Everybody's talking about wearable computing and how you tie this into your operations and how you use this. And the reality is, back in 2013, that's what you were doing. I walked that line with you. I watched those operators using this technology, and it was, it was like a pair of gloves to them, right? It was something that assisted in what they did. It was not invasive, and this is a plant in the heartland. This is a heavy discrete operation. This is if you had to pick a workforce and put a bet down and said, who is going to be able to adopt technology that's at the bleeding edge, that has, a nickname for people who wear these devices that's not, necessarily very flattering, it wouldn't be there. Yet it was there. Yet you could see those folks doing it. So, I think that discussion around the culture and how you work within that culture and how you bring these tools, you've got a credibility there, quite frankly, that very few people carry with them. So I think these are great insights. I think as we go around, and Peggy, I want to end with you, but we'll start, we'll go John, Rick, and then Alex. Give me a thought, a parting thought, if you want to say a call to action, if you want to do a 1-minute pitch on your product. I don't care what it is, but give folks something to leave with today, that maybe they can hit Google and they can say, look, maybe they can hit the web and, say, look up an approach, a technology, a technique that can get things moving. I want to do something that's low risk, high value, move quickly. John, what do they look at? Where do they go?
Oh, it's on mute.
Can't hear you.
All right. Better?
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Sorry. I was saying we don't have a search engine, so you're safe. It's all good. My gosh, this stuff is hard, right? If it were easy, we wouldn't still be talking theory since, early 2000s or even earlier in many instances. But something about Industry 4.0 and smart manufacturing is still so academic, in the sense that it's a lot of theory and how do we want to do it? And let's build a consortium and figure it out together, right? So, when you go through this journey, pick a good partner, pick somebody who's going to invest in the long term in you as a customer and as a partner. Be mindful of a purpose, right? Have a business objective and a really clear outcome. Don't adopt technology just for the sake of adopting technology because it's cool or something like that. And start small, right? Start small and scale effectively. Prepare for global scale if you're a global organization, or national scale if you're a national organization. Plan for that, but start small. Find the low-hanging fruit, get some wins. All of those small wins fund your bigger projects internally, right? So get the momentum you need.
Good stuff. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I think John hit on a critical piece there. Is don't adopt technology just for the technology. I hear that a lot coming from the executive suite, that AI or augmented reality is the new hot topic. Push that to the operations. I think that's where these projects tend to fail and get hung up. Is really looking at what is the business problem you're trying to solve, and there's going to be a technology that can help you get there. The other key thing, I think, is not to get hung up on, again, what is the data and what is the technology, but what is the business problem? You're going to have enough data. Manufacturers have plenty of data, and you can find the data to support that, but really focus in on what business problem are you trying to solve.
Good stuff. Rick?
So we've pretty much taken, we've been in the asset management business for 45 years, started with the Navy, so we really understand that concept. And And with the ISO 55000 standard for asset management, we really are front end. Let's define the business need. Let's define what the critical things are. Now let's have these set of processes that again, 45 years of developing these processes of how to manage your physical assets across their life cycle from design through decommissioning. And then apply those right tools. I mean, I couldn't say it. I think it's just spot on. I was an early adopter of predictive maintenance, so it's kind of cool just go out and buy some tools. But it's like, but what are we going to use these tools for? So don't get caught up in that. But there's such huge value in applying the right tool to the right business problem and getting that return. And then again, I'll mention it and then take the people on the journey with you, right? Don't think you're going to do this to them. You need to do this with them, and just make sure you're engaging that workforce and give them the time. I see as people make errors, it takes us months to decide to do this, or sometimes years, and then we expect our people to be ready in the week, right? It's going to take them the same time it took us to get our heads around what is this and why are we doing it and all these things. So, don't forget to take the people on the journey with you. You'll be much happier with the results.
Good stuff. Peggy?
So all of the things that they said, I'll take credit on those too, but then I'll come back to the evolution versus revolution, right? Every company knows their problems better than anybody in the world. You can bring in people to look for them and audit them and assess them, but I guarantee you, everyone on this call can tell me if quality is their worst issue or delivery is their biggest problem. I mean, productivity is just whatever it is. But those are the problems we're solving here. They're not new problems that align with industry, the Internet of Things. They're the same old problems we always had. We just have better solutions. And I think that being said, start where you are. So when we put glass in, we didn't have standard work instructions. There's a big thing to listen to. We did not have them. We went operation to operation, evolution, and built them in so that everyone could work with that tool. So it's not, I think people sometimes say, oh, but I don't have, or I can't do, or that's not the answer, because in 10 years, we're going to be closing doors on manufacturing facilities just based on sheer inability to get resources. So we have to work smarter now. And then I say, call vendors, call partners, call people who can make you smarter on the right questions to ask, so that you're partnering up front. Don't think you have to clean your house before you have the cleaning lady come in, right? These guys know tons of stuff that will make us smarter every single day. So I think where I start is I benchmark and I talk to partners, people that are in the industry, to help me understand better what that solution is, what that technology is, what value it can drive, and what problem of mine it's actually solving.
I love it, and that's a great pitch, because it comes down to the people, and it's the larger ecosystem, and really leveraging everybody's expertise to help you drive and solve the same problems we've had, frankly, forever, right? Solve them faster, solve them more effectively. So listen, I just want to thank everybody. Peggy, thank you so much for your time. Alex, John, Rick, I know everybody's busy. I hope our attendees got some value out of this, got some things to think about, maybe things to pursue. Just want to say thanks. And again, thanks to SME. And I'm going to turn it over to Carl. I think he's going to wrap things up here with just some final announcements.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, super discussion, very informative. Special thanks to all of our guests and our panelists today for providing their insight into the challenges and the opportunities utilizing all the mountains of data to improve the manufacturing processes and operations. We appreciate your time supporting the manufacturing community, and I appreciate your time supporting SME events. And of course, a special thanks to all of our attendees who participated this afternoon. We appreciate your time as well. We hope you found this panel to be informative. And just to know, we are going to be distributing a quick survey, and we would appreciate your time and feedback to help us improve the content that we deliver moving forward. This webinar will be recorded, and it will be made available soon on our manufacturing technology website. And really quick, join us next month on September 16th. Oh my gosh, September already, folks. At 3 o'clock Eastern time, when we're going to showcase the digital transformation for small to medium-sized manufacturers as we begin to launch our live events, starting with our MT series at HughesTech, then EastTech, and SouthTech, and then in November in WestTech and AeroDef conference. So We've got a big stable of live events coming up soon, and we hope to see everyone there. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.